Today we are going to work House Bill 2686. What is the will of the committee? Representative Vaughn.
Mr. Chair, I would move that House Bill 2686 be passed out favorably of the committee. Thank you.
Do I have a second? Representative Smith, seconded. Now open for discussion. I have the floor. I have an amendment. You'll pass those out, then we'll go into it. I have one. Everybody has one? At this point, we'll ask our advisor, Mr. Wagner, to give an overview of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, starting on page 1, kind of one of the bigger portions of the amendment is that it removes the transfer of the Division of Environment to the new agency. So you can see on page 1, all of those statutes that were updated to pertain to the new agency, new secretary, those have been stricken. I haven't shown every single section that would be stricken, but you can look at that list of statutes there. Anything marked in red will be taken out of the bill. And that all relates to that Division of Environment transfer. Moving on, the next bullet you'll see is making the provisions of this new section become effective on and after July 1, 2023. That corresponds to the new effective date for the bill, which is July 1 of 2022. But that July 1, 2022 effective date only pertains to groundwater management reporting requirements that we'll go over in a little bit. Every new section of the bill, including every amendatory section remaining, will still become effective July 1, 2023. That's what that language is doing, and I'll show you an example of the lead-in language for all the amendatory sections for that part. Moving on, and environment is stricken, obviously, from the new department name is now the Kansas.
I have a question right quick.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was going to wait till he got finished.
Oh, okay. We'll just put your name down then.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Since the Division of Environment transfer is being removed from the bill, every title to the new department is now Kansas Department of Water, and correspondingly the Secretary of Water. I show examples throughout the amendment that will obviously happen throughout the bill, including all of the amendatory sections. Starting with new section 4 on page 7, this is where the Division of Environment transfer is being removed further in the new parts. So the Division of Conservation is still being transferred and is becoming its own division in the department under this amendment. So those two were originally consolidated together. So the amendment just strikes the portions related to the Division of Environment, leaves in the transfers for the Division of Conservation. And Kansas Department of Water was just added to that language just to clarify between the KDA and the new department. So that goes on for the next few pages. Starting in subsection C of section 4 on page 11, you can see just all those responsibilities that were linked to the Division of Environment are being stricken. and not being transferred to the new Division of Conservation under the Department of Water. On page 14, there were just some additional clarifications of Division of Conservation, the responsibilities that are included in those portions. I just wanted to make sure those are included in that subsection. Page 17 of the amendment, obviously, without doing the Division of Environment transfer, we don't need to rename KDHE, so that section is stricken. Section 8 on page 19, there's some clarifying language for the Water Environment Maintenance Board. The powers under subsection F on 2, you can see the balloons adding that they'll approve the agency budget drawn from the Water Environment Maintenance Fund. And also that they can provide funding, the board can provide funding to other state agencies for projects, initiatives, and programs that relate to water or that implement the state water plan. So presumably, if Division of Water or Division of Environment has any water projects, they could go to the board and potentially get some of these funds approved for those projects. Moving on to page 20, the water rights fee is modified. It is now based on not the authorized quantity of water under the Appropriation Act, but rather the amount of water used in the previous calendar year. That would be submitted with the annual use report to the chief engineer as that language stands now. And then additionally, this water rights fee in subsection F, it still doesn't pertain to anyone that pays the water protection fees, but also it will not apply to anyone that's assessed an annual water user charge by a groundwater management district under that statute. So those two categories are accepted from the new fee. Going on page 21, striking all of the GMD sections, sections 10 through 12, leaving in new section 13 that begins on page 24. As I said, this is the only new section that would be effective July 1, 2022. And that corresponds to some things that need to happen before the other effective date for the transfer of July 1, 2023. There is language included kind of to, as the committee discussed, to clarify what needs to be in the report, not later than January 31 of each year. The board of a district needs to submit a written report on finances and activities of the district in the calendar year most recently audited. Most recently audited year is not the previous calendar year, then a draft or unaudited report for the previous calendar year shall also be submitted. Additionally, there are new reporting requirements pertaining that have to be submitted by January 15th of 2023. So those are listed in that third balloon on page 24. So just briefly, it's an itemized list of each resolution program by the board that results in measurable conservation of water over the last 5 years and total cost of implementation. Itemized list of each resolution program established or other action by the board that board believes encouraged conservation but did not result in any measurable conservation of water over the last 5 years. And again, total cost of the implementation. And the goals and priorities set by the board for any period over the next 20 years and actions to achieve such goals. And a list of the areas within each district that meet the criteria under kind of the AGUCA areas of concern and specific actions to address those areas. Then going on, it strikes the remaining GMD sections through section 19. On page 32, in section 20, that's an amendatory piece. I said that this would be lead-in language on and after July 1, 2023. That would correspond with the agency transfer, so that would be added to every amendatory section that remains. Then going on, where page 204 would be, we're inserting 2 new statutes. and creating a sales tax distribution equal to 1.398% of the revenue collected and received from sales tax, and that would be credited to the new Water and Environment Maintenance Fund. Similarly, the other statutes for compensating use tax, they're kind of pieced together, as I understand it, as sales tax overall, so it's added to both statutes. Page 208 of the bill, you can see the balloon strikes language pertaining to hazard class C dams. Originally, those have to be conducted by a licensed professional engineer. There was language added to that it could be someone under direct supervision. That's stricken just for hazard class C dams. So those still need to be inspected by a licensed engineer. Page 227 of the bill strikes the water protection fee statute. So essentially that strikes the increase that was in that section. So those fees will remain as is under the amendment. And then I believe that's it. Other than last page, just explain effective date and why that's being stricken. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of the revisor. Representative Riley.
Well, thanks for all that turnaround work that you did. It sounds like you spent 24 hours a day here. So I think there's a lot of good things in this, Mr. Chair. I would just, and there a possibility of maybe some other substitute amendments or whatever, but I just need some time to work through this and read this. I mean, I have a bad habit of doing that. So I would just request that we table this for 24 hours.
The chair does not recognize that request. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just got a quick question on the funding piece, both on page 20 and then on the attachment where we're adding back in this portion of the state sales tax. Do we know how much money, back on page 20, we're striking the GMD fees? Do we know how much will still be generated from the non-GMD fees?
When the original Blue Ribbon Committee met, they said 0.1% of the sales tax. Well, that only netted about $3 million. What they meant to write was 1/65. And that calculation brings it up, but I had it lowered to a point where it will generate $45 million.
Okay. On the state sales tax, do we know how much the fees in section 9 on page 20, do we know approximately how much that would raise?
The most recent answer I got to that question is about $390,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions for the revisor? Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you go over, either the revisor or yourself, a little bit about the role of the Division of Conservation in the Water Department?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Division of Conservation would just be a division underneath the new department. It would operate similarly to how it does now. Transfers and everything still apply as they did under the original bill. Yeah, it would just basically just transfer that division to the new department and still keep their same powers that they have now.
So no real change in their role, basically it's just putting them into that division, into that department.
That's correct. They were already a part of that transfer originally. This just makes the Division of Conservation its own division rather than being combined with the Division of Environment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions for the reviser? Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a lot of information in this and a lot of striking and a lot of introductions on words. Does this continue to allow local government to have local control with this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you're referencing groundwater management district boards as the locals in this circumstance, and all of those procedures, elections and everything, all of that's taken out with this amendment. The only piece that's left in is the reporting requirements for new section 13. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Is that a yes or no?
I would say they continue to operate as they do now with this removal, with this language being removed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions for the reviser?
Maybe, I apologize, Mr. Chair. One more time, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you show me in Crayola, what are we doing to this map then with this amendment?
The yellow box moves to be its individual division.
Okay.
Department of Environment goes back over to Kansas Department of Health and Environment.
Are we giving any money or allocating any money to the Department of Conservation then in this? Help me understand.
Let me back up and start over. After rereading all the testimony, both pro and con, went through all of this, the big sticking point was the groundwater management districts. So we removed them entirely from the bill, except for their reporting structure. So they still have local control. All we're asking for is reporting. We still have the problem of money. So that, we went back to the Blue Ribbon Committee, looked at that. They recommended 1/10 of 1%, but their calculations were faulty in that Blue Ribbon Committee. What they should have said is 1/65th, or one part of the 6.5 rate. And that ends up being this 1.5 something, and I lowered that so that it would generate 45 million. And also, the only group of water users in the state that are not contributing to the water fund are the irrigators that are not within a GMD. So I asked them to pony up, and we have the sliding scale, 25 to 250, and it's based on the amount of water usage by acre feet. So if they use 25 acre feet, they pay $25. Up to $250. Above that, they still only pay the $250. The date changes are obvious. And that basically, it's a lot of word changes, obviously. We've stricken a lot out of the original bill, but that's basically it, to try to comply with a lot of the negative testimony on this bill. So that's the reason I put this amendment together. Questions? Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you refresh me just a little bit on how you see that $45 million being spent?
Well, in the bill, that fund group, the board, has the authority to determine where that money goes. So each of the divisions come to the board with their budgets. The secretary is a member of the board, but does not have override ability. So the board decides where the money will be spent within that budget. And that's in this amendment.
Thank you.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate everybody's input on this. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a substitute motion, In place of your amendment, I am offering my amendment that would remove the contents of the bill and put into place two things I believe we can all agree on. It would institute the GMD reporting to the legislature. This would encompass all of Section 13 of the original bill, plus changes that Representative Howerton had requested. Number two, it institutes the Blue Ribbon Task Force funding of the water resource management, using the mechanism of 0.1% of existing sales tax revenues to fund the state water plan.
Do you have this printed?
I do.
Let's distribute that, and then we'll continue further. While they're doing that, do we have a second? Representative Fairchild, seconded. Everybody has a copy? You want the revisor to explain, or are you going to continue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, this amendment would insert a substitute bill for the original bill and have just three sections in it. Section 1 is the GMD reporting requirements from new Section 13 in the bill. Just contains some modified language for the audited and unaudited reports to clarify that, but all the rest of that section stays as it is in the original bill. So some of those additional reporting requirements are not a part of that, as you saw in the previous amendment. The other two sections is a similar sales tax distribution of this one would be 1.538% of sales tax collected, sales and compensating use tax collected, and the effective date for this bill would be July 1, 2022. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the revisor? Representative Riley.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Would the revisor go back through again and do a comparison of this new substitute comparison to the amendment that we had on the table previously? Just what are we gaining and what are we losing by going with this new substitute amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So all of the reorganization pieces are out. Everything in the bill is stricken, and the substitute bill is inserted. So the bill would just become substitute bill with these 3 sections only.
But are you comparing that against the original bill or against the original, the amendment we have on the table?
So that was the comparison against the original bill. Compared to the amendment, the reporting requirements do not include the parts of the previous balloon that report that was supposed to be submitted by January 15th of 2023, including goals, priorities for conservation. That's not a part of the substitute bill. And then the amounts, the sales tax distribution amount for the substitute bill is 1.538%. For the balloon, the previous balloon amendment, it's 1.398%. So that's the differences between the two. Other than obviously, yeah, the reorganization is stricken from the substitute bill.
So I guess what I'm getting at is this becoming a complementary to the original amendment? Or are we changing the area? I understand we're changing the part of how we're allocating the sales tax, but I'm trying to see what the other ramification of this substitute motion is.
That's the carrier of the substitute motion to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. This amendment is simple. It simply provides an avenue for us to move forward with these simple 2 additions or 2 parts of this amendment. Remember in 17 from the Blue Ribbon Task Force that this structure was approved by many different entities, the Kansas municipalities, the chamber, the ag organizations. And so it's something that everybody was able to get around. The funding mechanism is simple. We take that 1%, half of 1% out of existing sales tax, so we're not adding any new taxes. It allows us time to look forward and not have to deal with the reconstruction of a water entity. We can do that later on. So it's easier to get your head around of what we've done for the last year and a half, and it gives us something to move forward with because we've done an extreme amount of work trying to get to this point. I think it does another thing that we just need more time to really process on how this structure would work, what the cost of putting this structure into place would be. And so it kind of puts that down the road just a little bit too. And it does. It gives us a pathway and all to form individual bills moving forward instead of trying to do this one big mega bill and to look at different structures, different ways the GMDs work, how those boards are elected. But we can do this on down the road also. There's no doubt that the funding mechanism is the most important thing that we do out of this water committee as far as my point of view is. There's already $12 million in existing fees to the state water plan. So if this fee would go to the state water plan, they have the whole line item of issues that they need to accomplish and get done. This gives them that funding mechanism to get those projects done in a timely fashion. So that's the purpose of my amendment, and I'll stand for any further questions.
Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. You brought up an important point that I forgot to mention in the comparison. The distribution in the substitute bill does go to the state water plan fund. The distribution, the previous balloon, goes to the water and environment maintenance fund. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. And
that would be because of the combination of agencies under the one heading. So we need to keep that separate, and this would go to the water office then.
Before we move on, I'm going to ask the research. Victoria, what is the difference between the percentage in the previous amendment and this amendment? What would it raise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this amendment, the 1.5, whatever it is, would be 49.5 million, and the original balloon amendment was 45 million.
Thank you. Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, I wanted to verify, is the language around the reporting for the GMDs the same in this amendment as it was in the proposed amendment by the chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The language in subsection A, B, and C, D, yeah, so that is all the same as it appears in the balloon amendment. The additional reporting from the proposed balloon from the chair included additional conservation goals and priority reporting that had to be done by January 15, 2023. That is not a part of the substitute bill.
I would think that that's also an important part of the reporting on this, so I'd like to put that out there for discussion. And then, if I may, I would like to ask a question of the bringer of the motion. And, you know, in proponent testimony, we did hear reservations about having the Division of Environment within this new reorganized structure. But otherwise, I thought there was a lot of consensus that reorganization was a good idea for the consolidation of agencies and to increase the voice that they have at the table in regards to having a cabinet level position to really advocate for the future of water in Kansas. So I know that you said that it was kind of something that could be addressed down the road, but I'm just kind of wondering, you know, why that decision was made to take reorganization off the table when we heard a lot of proponent testimony in favor. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate the question too. As I kind of stated before and maybe fumbled through it a little bit, I have a lot of concern of establishing this new part of government, but yet we've never decided what the duties may be for sure, and we don't know any fiscal effect of establishing this new agency, as you might say. And so that's the reason I think it needs to be held or handled separately and maybe in the near future with the Water Committee.
Thank you, and I appreciate your concerns around that. I would maybe disagree a little bit. You know, I think we saw that all of the existing responsibilities and duties that are under those current agencies would be transferred, so those would be the same. And the fiscal note would just be associated with any additional fees raised in the position of the secretary as an additional FTE. So I think those elements are known, and, you know, and I completely respect your position on this. I think my feelings on this are kind of as I previously stated. I think this is a really important component of this bill in terms of ensuring that we raise the profile of water, because I think that addresses a lot of our long-term concerns. We can put more money into this, which is also incredibly important, and we can increase accountability, but ensuring that we have a seat at the table is equally important in the future of water. And so I would be opposed to this amendment, and I appreciate the intention that went into this. But I think reorganization, just as we've seen with Parks and Wildlife, as was mentioned in testimony, has really transformed their ability to advocate for those things in our state government. So I don't see that this adds a lot of bureaucracy, has been stated. I think it keeps the existing functions, puts them in one agency, and puts a secretary at the table who can advocate for them. So I would consider this unfriendly. Thank you.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Victoria answered my question. I'm glad we got the same numbers there. I know somebody on tax committee that was trying to mud through those numbers, but I did want to clarify and kind of, I think, to Representative Riley's question, you know, this isn't a balloon amendment. This is a complete what we call a gut and go, where that's why we don't have a lot of pages of stricken language. So there's nothing from the original bill that is retained. Kind of to follow up on Representative Vaughn's question, to carry the substitute motion, talking about the Kansas Water Office, I know a motion to amend an amendment isn't in order, but if this motion should carry, would you be willing to entertain a motion, or would you be favorable to moving the Kansas Water Office back under the Kansas Department of Agriculture, where it has a secretary position?
I would do that, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Howerton.
Okay, that just confused me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So now I have two questions, I guess. What does that mean? Moving it back under the water. Is that where it is now? What does that mean?
No, it is not now. It's where it used to be under KDA.
You have to ask the reviser and research, is that a true statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully the agencies can confirm, but I don't believe that the Kansas Water Office was ever under the Department of Agriculture, and they're shaking their heads, so.
Okay, I was under that impression. I guess I was mistaken then. I'll take that.
Okay.
Never created, it was a standalone. Kansas Water Office was a standalone.
Okay. So my question that I raised my hand for was, I guess more maybe of a statement. I am very new to this water committee and water in general, but I have a management background. I managed 22 tax offices. And what I've heard this year in this committee is that, and maybe the advisors can remind me of how much, or research, how much of the water budget has been taken in the past, well, like it was 15 years? How much has been taken to, and not applied to water?
The recent figures I saw, the amount of funding that did not go to the water plan was about 85 million.
So for the past 15 years, is that right?
I think that's close.
I want to be accurate. For the past 15 years, we have not given water the attention that it deserves. And to me, that is a very negative thing, because water is our life. And I have learned that water is our future. And if we do not make changes now, even if they're hard changes and scary changes, I'm afraid that we're going to, the future's not looking too great right now, financially and economically, but water has to be prominent. And the only way to make it prominent in my mind is to give it a voice. And I like the fact that we are going to give water a voice. I thought water committee was going to be my hardest committee, and I was like, yeah, water. I don't even know anything about water, but I'm very passionate about this. And I think water needs a voice at the table. And I think the proposals that the First Amendment that Representative Hyland, Chairman Hyland brought encapsulates everything that we heard in the testimonies. And so I don't want to do a gut and go. I want to maintain the good and proceed on and give water a voice, because something has to change. And I really believe that. So that's my statement.
Further discussion? Representative Newland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do apologize. I really wasn't talking about the water office earlier. It's on the districts that I was talking about. And so when the representative mentioned that, I was talking about a different agency. So I apologize for that.
Further discussion? Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For me personally, I don't think this committee was built to explore the issue of water and funding because of the lack of government. I think it was built or made here, appointed, so that we could actually talk about this issue, bring this issue to light, and start talking about the importance of going with our obligations that we had already said, this is what water needs, and this is what we should give to. You know, we talk about the bank of KDOT and taking from KDOT. Well, we've been taking from water. We have a budget committee right now called the Ag and Natural Resource Budget. And they listen every year on the issues that are needed in water. And again, as I mentioned from the very beginning, I don't think the expansion of government and having more government is the answer, but just actually just funding and bringing the money to where it needs to be. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close on my amendment.
All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no?
No.
The chair cannot decide. So all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. How many did you get? 9-6. The amendment passes. Are there further amendments? Representative Vaughn.
Mr. Chair, I would make a recommendation, and this is a bit off the cuff, but that we align the reporting language that was listed in your balloon amendment with the language that is now in the existing amendment to the bill.
Representative Riley.
I'd second that.
Original maker of the amendment, is that approved? Any further amendments? Representative Vaughn.
Oh, yeah, I think we need them.
I was just reminded, we have to take a vote on the amendment to the existing bill. So all those in favor of questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Could you tell me in this amendment what pages that motion was made on your amendment there, Mr. Chair or Reviser?
It's page 24 on the original, the first balloon amendment. That's where that language can be found. It's the third balloon on page 24. It would be inserting that language if I'm not misunderstanding.
And Mr. Chair, may I elaborate? So just to clarify, I believe the bringer of the former amendment had the same financial reporting language that is in this amendment as well. The additional language that would be added would be a one-time report that we're asking the groundwater management districts to put together with the information that's listed on page 24. And the idea behind that is just to give us a better idea of what progress they've made on establishing some sort of conservation stabilization plan. It's not requiring any of it. It just gives us an idea through more transparency and accountability what they've done and what they're planning to do to address areas of concern. And so that will hopefully just give us a better baseline for understanding where each of the groundwater management districts are at and really accomplishing their statutory goal, which is to really address groundwater management. So that would just be a one-time report, and hopefully it would provide the legislature with a little bit more information to know how to move forward into the future. So thank you.
Representative Croft, have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question actually is to Representative Newland. Are you going to bring an also amendment per the conversation that was held earlier about moving the water department underneath the agriculture secretary?
I won't, no.
Okay. Is there any discussion? I mean, I didn't know if we were going to do that, so thank you.
Representative Vaughn.
I can comment on that. In my opinion, I think that would be perhaps worse than the existing structure, just because I think it's important for water to have some autonomy from agriculture, just because agriculture is the biggest water user, and there should be a relationship there, but I think it's important for that conflict of interest to not exist by putting that agency under the Secretary of Agriculture would be my thoughts on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Howerton.
So who is the voice of water now?
After
This amendment, who's the voice?
it would remain as it is now.
So,
Kansas Water Office and the Water Resource Office and Environment has their voice, but it's within KDHE.
okay,
And the conservation districts are within Department of Agriculture, where they are now.
so low level or middle management. In my management mind, it's middle management, right? Okay, and then, okay. So there's government agencies suing government agencies, spending $500,000 on legal fees, and that will continue, correct? Okay,
I can't predict judicial.
yeah. Well, it's not judicial, it's not in the courts, they're just getting attorneys to spend money against other government agencies. Okay.
Representative Croft, you have another question.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up. So, I mean, in the conversation we had, we talked about water needing to be at the table. And is it not better to have water at least temporarily up underneath agriculture while we're doing this so they have a seat at the table rather than not having a seat at the table at all? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
My answer to that would be no, but that is not part of the bill that we're voting on right now, or that we've passed. That would have to be an amendment on the floor. Any further discussion? Representative Jacobs, again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Technically, we are that voice. We are the elected representatives of our people, of our district, of their interests. We are that voice. This problem isn't because, the funding problem isn't because of the departments. The funding problem is because of the representatives not listening or not allocating that money. That's the whole issue here. So if we seriously want to take this as a serious discussion, we will fund it. Again, it's in the budgets every year. The departments come up every year and say, this is how much money we'd like. This is how much money we'd like to see. They're always coming up. Every department in this state comes up to us once a year or multiple times a year and begs us for money. We can either give it to them or we don't have to. But at the end of the day, as you hear it said, the buck stops here. It's we, the people, right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Getting a little off track here. We're still on the Representative Vaughn addition to the bill. Any further questions on that? Representative Schmidt.
Well, I would like to support that. I think, frankly, I'm disappointed in the direction this is going, but I think if we can implement those reporting requirements into the the bill that we're about to vote on, I think it's, at least we save part of the process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion on the Vaughn addition to the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. It passes. So now, we are done. Whoop. Representative Vaughn.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I do have another amendment that I'd like to bring. Just to clarify, does the Water Maintenance Fund Board still exist under this new amendment, or does all of this funding go to the State Water Plan Fund?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, all the sales tax distribution would go to the State Water Plan Fund.
So then could I just request some clarification for how that money would be distributed? Would it just be that the KWA would make recommendations so agencies wouldn't necessarily even have a voice in how that money is distributed?
Yeah, I mean, basically the State Water Plan Fund money that would be allocated as it is now through the KWA and through the same procedure that it is now, just a bigger pool of money, I suppose.
So just to clarify, in the current process, the regional advisory committees make recommendations to the Kansas Water Authority for how state water plan funds are spent, but this additional $49 million would be added to the state water plan fund without any recommendations being made by agencies for the existing agencies under the existing structure for how those dollars should be spent to benefit those agencies. So I do find that a little concerning, and I wonder if that's worthy of discussion, or if other members have thoughts around that. Thank you.
I see floor amendments coming. Any further comments? Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have one last amendment, if the committee will humor me. I think going back to my previous point, I think it's really important to have some autonomy and accountability with those who are carrying out the laws as dictated by the state in regards to how we implement water rights and how we uphold the public and future interest of water in our state. And I think a key part of that is ensuring that the chief engineer is an independent authority. As it stands now, we are the only state in which the decisions of the chief engineer can be reviewed by the Secretary of Agriculture, which is a political appointment. And I think that's troublesome in the long term for the future of water, because I think as a regulatory position, it should be independent. And there are safeguards in place so that if those decisions are not agreed with in terms of the chief engineer's decisions, that those decisions can be appealed and even taken to the district court. So there are safeguards in place for decisions that are made, but I do think it should be an independent position. Therefore, I have an amendment.
Conceptual amendment.
Yeah, I think it's been drafted.
And Mr. Chair, thank you. I wasn't sure where to draft this particular amendment, but I can explain it to the committee as I understand it. And Representative, please jump in. So on the original bill, House Bill 2686, Section 249, on page 260 going into 261. That section amends 82A-1901, which is appeals procedures for orders of the chief engineer. So if I understand the representative's motion, that section 249 would be inserted into the substitute bill as it stands in House Bill 2686, the original House Bill 2686. And obviously, there are references to the old department in there that would be changed back to the Department of Agriculture, since that is where the chief engineer will remain. So, yeah, it's section 249 inserted into House Bill, or substitute for House Bill 2686 with the appropriate technical corrections. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a second? Representative Stogsdill. Discussion on the proposed amendment. Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally agree that this needs to be discussed much further down the road, but at this time, I don't think I would be in favor of bringing this up onto this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to clarify, this is something that's been part of the discussion. We've heard from water attorneys say that we're the only state where the chief engineer's decisions are able to be reviewed by a political appointment within the Department of Agriculture. And I think it's important that if that relationship continues, where the Division of Water Resources is in the Department of Agriculture, that we ensure going into the future that there's just a little bit of autonomy for the chief engineer under his existing statutory authority, so none of that would change. It would just ensure that that those decisions are made in the best interests of Kansans instead of potentially influenced by politics. And again, those decisions are appealable and are able to be addressed in the district court system as well. So there are safeguards in place, but I do think this is important for ensuring that we fairly address water issues into the future. Thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would second what the previous representative mentioned, that we do need to have some autonomy in making decisions. In light of this not being a separate department, we do need someone who can make these decisions, difficult decisions that have to be made, who is not a political appointee and who has the expertise to do it. So I think this is a good amendment to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Vaughn, you may close.
I close and move my amendment.
All those in favor of the Vaughn amendment to insert the language for what was in the original bill for the water resource, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. No. It appears the noes have it. The noes do have it. Anything further? We are adjourned.
Sir.
Okay. Just a moment. Just a moment. We have to pass the bill out. I thought we did. I thought we did.
I don't think there was a substitute motion.
I thought we did. I've just been informed we need to take a second vote. And so do you want to make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I make a motion to pass out the substitute amendment that has been amended out of committee favorably.
So he's having a House substitute bill for House Bill 2686 as amended.
Correct.
Did I see a hand raised? Seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The chair is in doubt. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. It passes. We are adjourned.